Welcome to the tip channel. That is perfection.
Hello and welcome back to the tip channel. Today we're going to cover what you could do to repair an existing tulip flange. Now it may not be as broke as this, but these plastic flanges, what happens a lot is that right down in here, this is only 3/16 of an inch and your commode bolt goes into here. So what happens is a lot of times if somebody over torques the screw, these will break out. Or if somebody's wobbling the commode a little bit, again, it can break this out. So how do you repair it without tearing apart all the plumbing? Stick around, we're going to show you that. So basically we're going to go ahead and take care of this tool today. Very first thing that we want to do is to shut the water valve off. Now, after we have the water valve off, then we want to take and flush the commode. We'll go ahead and take the tulip tank lid off, set it to the side. Now, even though you flush the commode, there's still going to be a good bit of water left in the commode. So you have one of two possible scenarios to take care of that. Number one is you could take a towel and go down inside the tank and soap it up with a towel, then wring it out in a bucket. The second thing is to use a shop vac. Now, this shop vac I keep around for exactly that. This shop vac's about 30 years old, and how can something be 30 years old and still working? Because it doesn't have all those Chinese junk electronic parts that give away after a month. Anyways, we'll take and suck the rest of the water out of here. Keeping in mind, what we're going to do is we're going to take this tool out. We're going to bring it out here in the middle of the floor, and we're going to turn it over so that we can scrape all the wax ring off. So we want to get all the water out of there. Now I am going to change my supply line and my valve while I'm at it, and you can catch that in another video, changing the chrome supply valve. But they're about 35 years old, so it's time for a change. Now the supply lines have a rubber fitting inside of them. So in other words, if you look inside, this is rubber. And then again, where it hooks up to the valve, that is rubber. That's going to break down over time. So while we're tearing this apart, we might as well do it right. The next step is to get to the commode bolts. Now, depending upon the manufacturers, you may have a little flap that you just lift up, and right there's the commode bolt. The newer styles have a cap that go over top, but they just slide on. The old style is that it actually snaps down over top. So you take a flat screwdriver, go underneath the edge of it, and pop it up. It'll pop right off. So now we're down to the commode bolts. Now it's either going to be a 7/16 or a 1/2 inch, and I apologize, I'm not sure what that metric equivalent is, but 7/16 is what mine are, and if you're lucky, these are made out of brass. So typically you can just unscrew it and it'll come right off. Leftly tighty, rightly loosely. Anyways, if it does not come off, what's your possible scenarios? Your possible scenarios is that you may be able to grab a hold of the top of the bolt with a pair of vice grips and spin it up, but keeping in mind you may also mar the threads and might not get it all the way up either. So if it doesn't want to come loose, or if it's just spinning and spinning and spinning, you may be forced to use a hand grinder. And what I'm talking about is a tool like this. Now, if you're going to use a hand grinder, keeping in mind that the hot sparks coming off of this will actually mar some of the china. So take a piece of cardboard, put behind it, and use it. Second tool you could possibly use would be a multi-tool. My multi-tool with a metal blade naturally will take a lot longer, but it will work. All right, so now that we have our commode bolts off, our next thing is that we are now ready to lift this off. So what I normally do is I grab it right behind the seat, right in front of the tank. That seems to be like a center balance point, if you will. And you can lift the commode straight up and bring it right out here into the middle of the floor. Okay, the next part is going to get a little messy. Now we're down to the wax ring. We need to remove all of the old wax from both the tulip flange area and also the bottom of the commode. You might want to put on a pair of gloves, grab a piece of newspaper or a garbage bag, something to dispose the wax ring in. Now that we are down to the tulip flange and you've determined that you need to do a repair on the tulip flange, what's your options? Well, your options are one of two. These are a couple of tulip flanges And the way that they work is they go right over top of your existing tulip flange and screw down to the floor. Now, this particular one screws down right where your tulip flange is at. So if your floor is a little unstable and you're not getting a good bite here, they do make one like this as well. And this is stepping out a little further into the floor. So if you have a little bit of rot or something, switch to this one. Now, the way that these tulip flanges work is that you'll notice that this is where your commode bolt's at. So what you want is you want these slots, the center of these slots, to be in the center of the commode hole, so that whenever you put your commode bolts in here, you've got a little bit of play if you need to, and they'll be in the correct position. So you're going to take this, put it down over top, and then screw it into place. Now, do not use drywall screws, okay? You want to use something like these particular screws are what's referred to as backer-on. They're made for hardy backer. There's also rock-on, which is made for door rock. But anyways, these screws are a lot thicker than what a drywall screw is, and they're made to be in a wet environment. Now, I would suggest either using these or some Tapcons, either one, they're not going to rust out. Now, what's a traditional wax ring? These are the old style wax rings. This particular one has a rubber flange that goes down inside the hole and sort of directs everything to the correct position and sort of also holds it into place. Now, if your tulip flange was lower than the floor, what you had to do was use one of these and then stack another one on top of it, which does not have the ring on it. Or this rubber may be too high and you'd have to go with one just like this. Now, here's the problem with a traditional wax ring is that if you get any wobble in that commode whatsoever, what's happening? You're smashing that wax ring, and then you're either going to get a leak or you're going to get sewer gas. So you're right back to where you started at. A very dear friend of mine clued me in to a new style wax ring. And what's the saying? Once you do this, you never go back. I don't know, something like that. Anyways, this is the new style of wax ring. Since I've switched to using this, I definitely will not go back. Now, this particular one is by Fluid Master, and there's a lot of different brands out on the market today, and they're pretty much just about the same. Now, what is the advantage of using this type of wax ring? Well, let's take a look at the back, and then you'll understand a little bit more. If you look at the back of this, you see that you have some foam gaskets. And depending upon the height of your tulip flange, you adjust these accordingly. So in other words, if you're a ½ inch below the floor, you would use a thicker gasket. If you're even the floor, you would just use the thin gasket. And if you're above the floor, then you may not have to use a gasket at all. So with these foam gaskets, the neat thing about it is that if you do get some wobble in the commode, these things are going to take that wobble and spring back up. Now, another good feature, this will be the very last wax ring you will use, because you can take your tulip up if you have a clog or what have you and put it right back down again. You're not going to have to change this particular one. All right, the next step in the process is that we want to go ahead and put our new commode bolts into place. Now, this particular kit does come with new commode bolts, and what you're after is that you're wanting to put the commode bolt in, and you're wanting that commode bolt center of your hole, okay? Then you have these little plastic washers. Take this little plastic washer and push it down over the bolt. Now, what does a plastic washer do? The plastic washer holds that bolt into place so that it's not wobbling or falling over or what have you, making it a little more stable. Now, this particular one does have a break-off point, so if it's too long, you can take a pair of pliers and break it off and not have to worry about it messing up the threads. Okay, so with the new wax ring, now this is referring to this particular Fluid Master model. If your commode flange is slightly above the floor, you're going to only use this part. Now, if your commode flange is even with the floor or up to 1/4 inch below the floor, then you would add the second piece that comes with this kit, and that takes care of that. And there you have it. Now, If you're a ½ inch below or greater, you're going to need a second kit because you're going to add another one of these to the unit. Okay, so we determined that our Commode flange was a 1/4 inch below the floor. So we've added the gaskets, which are no longer wax, but they are actually foam. So we're ready to set our Commode. I went ahead and did my shut-off valve, changed it. And if you'd like to see a video on how to do that, I do have one of those available as well. And I've added my new supply line. So at this point, we're actually ready to set the Commode down into place. Now it does help if you have a little flashlight, stick it right beside of where you're going to be working at. Just sort of helps you to guide those into place. What we're wanting to do is to take the Commode, lift it up and set it right down on top of the bolts. With our Commode set into place, we're now ready to put our Commode bolts back on. Now, if yours was the old style, meaning that they popped off, you're going to notice that on one side of it, it says this side up. So you'll make sure that side is up, and then you want to take and put the new stainless washer that came with your kit on top of that, and then put your nut on. When you're tightening down your Commode bolts, naturally you want to snug them down. You don't want to get carried away. You don't want to break the china, but you do want it nice and snug. What you want to do is you want to feel that Commode's not rocking. Now, if you get it nice and snug and you still feel that rocking, here's the problem. Your floor may be a little unlevel. So what you want to do is use one of these. These are called Commode shims, and they're readily available. But they're basically a plastic shim. So you shove it underneath and then cut off the excess. You can cut that with a razor knife, or you can get your multi-tool. Just be careful of your floor and cut it off. But that will stop that rocking. Now, the good thing is that if there is a little bit of rocking, that new flange is going to take up that slop. You're not going to have to worry about crushing the wax ring anymore. And that concludes our video on how to change a wax ring on your Commode. I hope that you found this informative, and I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and have a great day.